the first piece of advice was basically ask for a date before you pop the question in any relationship. And so, don't walk in and say, "Hi, I'd really like to, build a relationship with you." You meet someone in line at Starbucks, you get their card, you give them a call, you have a short conversation, maybe you have coffee after that. And so, just remember that any kind of mating ritual is basically the same, no matter if it's someone you're dating, romantically, or if it's someone you'd like to have, be perhaps a personal mentor to you or your business mentor.
What if you just want a one-night stand?
That's a check.
So that's a super angel.
Right.
You gotta watch those VCs.
This isn't being filmed, is it?
Larry's
Not at all.
Right. That is not.
I was totally kidding. It was served up on a plate. I didn't mean that.
So was that your one-liner? Or?
Yeah, but I'm fine.
So my name is Deepak Kamra. I'm with Canaan Partners, which is a venture capital firm just down the road. We also have offices in New York, India, and Israel. We do early stuff. We do some seed. We do some first round and some later. So we're all over the place. Good lead-in from Christine. I actually specialize in online dating. Starting with Match.com a long time ago. And a company lately called Zeus, which is a social dating network, which I'm sure you guys are not on. But anyway, what do you do if you want to get mentored by a VC? It is like dating, but my suggestion to you would be to find the right VC for whatever you're interested in. Obviously, if it's dating, it's me, or Christine, apparently. But if it's a hardware device, you want to do some research, find out who's your target audience, find the right person, and according with software, internet, telecom, find something they're interested in and follow up on that.
Thanks. Hi. Good evening. I'm Joel Yarmon. I work with Tim Draper at Draper Associates. Tim founded DFJ. So seed stage fund, $250,000 to $800,000 in. First chunk, co-invest with a bunch of other people. Big ideas, big markets. You're on a clear trajectory to a later round of institutional equity. So building big, huge businesses that if DFJ can't fund and somebody else does, that's great. I'm doing my job. Focus on consumer and enterprise internet, no clean tech. DFJ does a lot of clean tech. I focus on that. And, I think at this point in my stage in my career, I've got a lot of friends. I wouldn't exactly call them, I don't think of myself as a mentor necessarily. I've been in this business 3 years. But, all of them, two things. One is be aggressive, be aggressive, and be confident. Right? Be confident. Know your space, right? Know what you know what you don't know. Know enough to ask the stupid questions. I do that a lot, and you'd be surprised at how many other people are thinking the exact same thing. Know when to listen, know when to give feedback, and above all, just be confident and continue to move forward and believe in your idea, believe in yourself, believe in the team, and people will flock to you, not the other way around.
Yeah, so name is Mark Suster. I'm a partner at a VC fund based in Los Angeles called GRP Partners, stage agnostic investor, predominantly investing in California, but on later stage stuff, we'll look elsewhere. Yeah, so I guess I would call it almost grooming. And I guess in dating, online dating terms, that's probably not a good word to use. But I'm sort of echoing the advice you heard before, which is all too often I'll see somebody online, or they'll send me an email, or I'll meet them at a conference that's, boom, I'd really love to have a mentor who's doing it. I'm like, dude, I just met you. Like, they come on so strong. And I want to use this in the context of how I behave. I was fortunate enough to sit next to Terry Semmel at lunch today at Eviat here in Palo Alto. And for those of you who don't know, he ran Warner and then he ran Yahoo. A reasonably important guy, a guy, especially for Los Angeles where I'm based, he's a pretty good guy to know. And the guy that I was having lunch with knows him incredibly well. So we had a sort of dialogue across the table with Terry and the gentleman he was with, who used to be one of his right-hand men at Yahoo. And it would have been very easy for me to say, hey, Terry, I'd love to come see you. I think going slow and waiting until you have the second or third contact with someone is usually better. And how you get introduced matters. So somebody who inorganically pops up, Mark, I want to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, certain number of those, if they're aggressive in the right way, and I might use assertive rather than aggressive, I know it's a fine gradation. Sometimes it works. Usually it doesn't. And I think the go slow and wait for the right approach really matters. One other thing I would add is if you're going slow, there are tools you can use. If you're humble and assertive and keep going and ask for very actionable things that I can help with, and if you view it as a relationship you're building over time, the generic, I want a mentor, sorry, it's not going to happen. The, hey, I just have one question, I really need 5 minutes, here's what it is, would you mind helping? Often when I'm driving, I'm like, fuck, I'll take a call. So I'm going to give you the example. There's a guy from MIT who called me to do this about 2 years ago. I had to drive from Santa Barbara to LA because I'm on the board of a company in Santa Barbara. And I can't mentor everybody and I can't take calls from everybody. But this one time I said, fine. And I ended up talking to him for an hour and I really liked him. And he had the right credentials and that matters because I'm trying to seek to mentor people that I feel like are high potential individuals. So that matters. And I do mentor people who I don't consider high potential, but I try to optimize for that. Well, no, sometimes you do it just to be nice or whatever. I don't want to sound elitist, but like, you know, whatever. So here's the tools of the trade, okay? If you can get them to send you something in Gmail, and you can get them to say yes to being in Gmail, look, occasionally I'm in Gmail and he'll say, hey, Mark, I just have one question. And I'm like, whoa, that's kind of overstepping the boundaries a little bit. Like, I only had one call with you. But it's, I just have one question. I have a sales meeting. Would you mind just da-da-da? And like, he's grooming me. And he connected to me on Facebook. And he didn't blast me the day he met me. Like, 2 months later, he connected on Facebook. I'm like, oh, fine, I'll connect on Facebook. Well, guess what? On Facebook, when you're connected to someone, you can instantly IM him. So I'll be on at 11:30 at night. And he said, Mark, I got a question for you. And I'm like, fine. And so then he created a reason to be in LA. I'm pretty sure he didn't have business in LA. He's like, I'm going to be in LA next Wednesday. Could you meet? Fine, I'll meet. And so from this, like 2 years later, I do almost anything for the guy. I consider him a friend. He's called, and he's asked me very organic questions about VCs that he's raising funds from, actionable things that I can help with. And so I'd say if you kind of stick to that, it really matters. And one last thing, because I get 3 and I'll overstay my time, is find ways to help me. Find ways to help me. And I'm not just saying that because I need help. I certainly do. But in general, there's a principle of reciprocity. And if people feel like you did something that really helped them, like a good intro, a high-quality intro, or a company that you met that you think is really high potential, or something that you could do that you think would make a difference to them that feels organic and that you ask nothing in return, 6 months later when you see them at an event like this, you're like, yeah, okay, I know this guy. Oh, that's what I think.
Great. Well, I guess some people we let people go a little over 3 sentences there. So before we go into sort of some of the other, are there any? We'll sort of wrap up with the lightning round by giving people, especially those who did sort of stick to closer to 3 questions, if there's anything that they wanted to respond to in the statements that were made by some of the other VCs.
Well, I'll throw out one of my other things I was thinking about, which is and this is more of a don't make this mistake item. Don't freaking guilt me. You know, like, so if you send me an email and I haven't responded to it, the whole thing or the next email, I think one of the articles Larry circulated had this item, but, you know, if you send me another email and references the first email or even worse forwards that email and says, hey, I'm still waiting to hear back from you on this email, what you have instantly done is put yourself in my chore list. I'm feeling guilty about you, you're a chore, I've got to deal with you to get rid of you and get you off my list. And that is not even close to how you want me to think about you. You want me to think about you like, oh, there's that cool guy. You know, oh, he's got this interesting thing. You know, because I'm not remembering I didn't answer your other email. It's buried with, you know, 700 others, right? So I sort of think about that, sort of You don't want to be a to-do, you want to be a new fun thing.
Great. So I'll do a couple questions, and I think Amy will do a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the audience. But before I do that, just want to get a sense of sort of who is here. So I assume everyone here is an entrepreneur. Raise your hand if you're not an entrepreneur. Great. Yes. Okay. How many of you are also students right now? Great. And how many of you are based in the Bay Area? And how many of you have a startup right now? Okay, great. So maybe the best place to start us off is to maybe get a little bit specific in terms of if each of you maybe could just sort of briefly talk about one fruitful relationship that you've had as sort of a VC mentor, and like sort of what made it a good fit and what was something good that came out of it. Can you start here,
Yeah.
Joel?
Yeah, so I used to work, before I did this, I was at Crunchbase, and I met a guy, a nice guy.
These guys suck.
And they suck, but he was very nice. And so he clearly didn't last long there. And, quit that job, moved on, started this job, and remained friends. He said, gosh, it's great. Kept going to lunch, wanted to do stuff. He ended up going to University of Chicago. We kept in touch.
I knew who you were talking about. He is a nice guy.
Little guy? Yeah.
He just
how
called you a
little?
little guy. You're going to be able to finger this guy.
Nice guy. Kept in touch. We often talked about nothing. We talked a lot about technology because we were both geeky. We talked a lot about, finance because we were both into that and the markets and everything else that was going on. And he, would shoot me interesting ideas every once in a while. And he shot me one idea. I met with the entrepreneur, really liked him, met with him a couple more times, decided to track him. And long story short, my friend who was at U Chicago is now taking a leave of absence to work with this guy whose startup out here, and has continued to talk to me. I've continued to talk to him. I found him a few employees. He sent me a guy that wasn't right for them that is now starting his own thing, and I'm meeting with him in a couple of weeks. And it's been a great relationship. And he asks me high-level questions that he knows I have a great background and a good answer for. And I think listens to me, and then we have great discussions about his business and strategy in places where, maybe I'm not right, but maybe he's not either, and we have really good back and forth, and all the cards are on the table because we ended up not funding it, and it continues to be a terrific relationship, and I want to follow him wherever he goes, and if this startup doesn't work out and his next one does, you can be damn sure I'm going to take that meeting and do my best to get it in front of him. And so it's been a great relationship, and now a great friendship.
Mark? Listen, the saying that I like the most is, if you want money, ask for advice, and if you want advice, ask for money. And I just think I'll just stick to that theme, which is ask for small, actionable advice and build a relationship over time. I already told my story, and I don't want to run over my 3 sentences.
Well, so, I think a lot of it, one thing you've got to realize is that as investors, we're trying to plant a lot of seeds because venture and tech investing is a long-term deal. And so you're going to have an opportunity to sort of develop those seeds that you connect with people. So a good example is there was a really bright young guy, Stanford undergrad, Harvard MBA, came to Austin and said, at some point I want to get in the venture industry. What do I need to do? I said, well, gosh, your credentials are terrific, but what would really be awesome if you could get some strong operational experience, and so see what you can do. So he went and got a job at Dell, worked at Dell for a couple of years, and then from there he said, okay, so what else do I need? I said, well, it'd be nice if you could, get some online or internet expertise under your belt, and he ended up getting recruited to Callaway Golf to run their online, he was the GM and VP of their interactive web piece. And then about 6 months ago, he calls me up and says, hey, you know, I've kind of done this for a while, and you know, it might be time for me to make a shift. And I said, okay, well, let me start thinking about it. And then 2 months ago, he called me up and said, okay, time's now. And then we started having discussions, and you know, he started Monday as our COO of kind of a stealth company right now. But he'll be launching their whole platform in association with some other people that we're working with. It's one guy's a repeat entrepreneur, and so it's kind of going back to, you know, I gave him some suggestions. He went and did every one of them. Came back and said, you know, hey, I did it. What's next? And so, you know, when you do those things, you build up a lot of credibility with the people that are mentoring you, and you do. You want to do whatever you can to make sure you help those people that take it to heart and go get it done.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than giving advice like, why did you ask me for this advice that you don't listen to anyway?
Right, right.
There's no purpose. So I guess I have a current example, which I like, just 'cause I think these guys are great guys. An organization called SSE Labs, which is here on the Stanford campus, that I mentored some of the teams last year, and this year I joined the board of advisors for, this is the Stanford, it's a student-run accelerator if you aren't from Stanford. So anyway, being student-run, it means the founders of SSE Labs are actually students here on campus, and so, which has been really fun for me, because I think they sort of played on my interest in getting some more work with the university, and then I got to know them through SSE, and then this year they're not only taking advantage of me as a mentor for SSE Labs, and you know, that's, again, they sort of went through a very patient process. I showed up to a couple events. They made sure they did things for me that I appreciated, like giving me credit when I was being helpful, which is always nice. They did things like making sure I was able to meet some of the startups, which professionally was important to me, to get to meet some of those startups. So they pushed, you know, some of the right buttons. And then, you know, as that relationship matured, sort of asking me to get a little more engaged with the organization. You know, now when we get together, you know, we're talking periodically about, you know, how should we be structuring sponsorships? And oh, by the way, we're going to be graduating. Would it be okay if we had lunch? I'd love to maybe get some advice about what I should be doing when I graduate. Right? So these two guys have played it so well. It's incredible, actually. They've taken a lot of advantage of me, and I'm happy to do it because it makes me feel good. And that's really what you want. If I'm not making money off you, I need to feel good about myself, or I need to be having fun or something. So give me something. And anyway, these guys have done a good job of that. And I don't know if they did it intentionally or not, but it's worked out to be a really good relationship, I think, both ways.
So I have spent some time with a couple of Stanford students who were introduced to me through family friends. And I think the key theme I would tell you is get an intern. Most VCs, despite what you may think, are very busy. They meet a lot of people. They see a lot of things. They see a lot of new things. They're trying to find the next great deal. So they don't have a lot of time for mentoring. And so if you want to get noticed by them, you have to kind of get through the noise. They have a very short attention span. You have to have somebody with credibility that gets you into the network. You might get lucky, you might get seated next to one, and maybe he likes you, and then he'll give you time. I think that's unlikely. It's all about networking. It's all about using your network to get in to see the VC who's most relevant to you. So, and the best source for me, but I mean, there are a lot of sources. It can be a professor who introduces you to a VC. It can be a family friend, as I said. It could be a lawyer, an accountant, whatever. But the best source is another entrepreneur, somebody who's a specialist or knows what you're doing, has done it successfully, and makes the introduction for you. So the guys I talk to the most are the guys that come to me from one of our CEOs. So we have about 58, 60 active companies in our portfolio. One of those guys calls me and says, you should talk to this guy. I'm going to spend as much time as he wants. And so you got to find the VC you want, who's the right guy, find his network, figure out what companies he's in, look at the extended network. It's all about social networking, and figure out how you can get into seat. It's all about getting the intro.
Great. What about an example of a mentor-mentee relationship that maybe didn't go so well? Any words of advice of a mentee who maybe didn't do things the way that you would have wanted to make it a really fruitful relationship that kind of turns you off to mentoring this person in the future? Any things to avoid?
I can talk about myself.
Sure.
No one wants to badmouth anyone else. So I know I have tried to be a mentee, different stages. I'm still trying, still looking for those. And so I think one of the worst mistakes I always made was, you get in there and you sort of have this, breathless anticipation of you're meeting this person and they're going to spend some time with you, and you get there and you don't have a good agenda put together for how you want to use that time, and you don't have a good plan for how you're going to follow up, having gotten that time and maybe gotten some advice. And I think looking back, whenever I've wasted an opportunity like that, those are the two things that I did every single time whenever I wasted an opportunity. So that's a mistake I think made things not go.
Any
I
other
think you should
negative
all
examples?
take advice from her because she's spot on. I think, you go in, have a plan of action. I mean, yeah, like even for me, I think there are people who've been in the industry for a lot longer than I have who I try to meet on a regular basis to try and get advice for me. And when I try to go in, I try to plan out what are my questions. I try not to have a general discussion. I mean, I got to tell you, 80% of people who meet you, it's a general discussion. I had a coffee with a guy this morning who's a really nice guy, and I've agreed to be his coach. Okay, and I can't disclose who it is, but I agreed to be his coach. But and I've been talking to him on and off for 2 years. But the strange thing is, we had an hour together, and 50 minutes into the meeting, I didn't know why we were meeting, but he had asked me to meet. And I know he's a smart, accomplished guy who's doing incredibly well in an area that I happen to know really well. And the way that I sort of prompt people is 10 minutes to go, I said, hey, I just want to prompt you that I have someone else coming to see me in 10 minutes, just so you pace yourself. And that's my polite way of saying, is there a reason we're meeting today? And it's okay if there's not, but if there's not, my recommendation, say up front, listen, I don't have an agenda. I just want to use this as a way to get to know you a little bit better and have a conversation. But you should have an agenda. I mean, even just some simple things that create structure in the conversation, because you make me do so much. It's so much harder for me to figure out what you want to hear, what you want to talk about, how I can best help you, than if you're focused. And really, honestly, when I go to these people that I really feel are hard to get time with and hard to get access to, I go in and I try to have a very simple ask. Here's the one thing that I would really love to see from our relationship. And I try to follow up on that. I mean, Josh Koppelman, I went to see him in Philly recently, and he's been pretty successful in this industry. And I wanted to know what made him tick. And so I went to see him. And he and I talk on the phone or email each other, but I hadn't had good one. And I see him at cocktail parties, but it's different. I wanted one-on-one time with him. And, I talked to him about the things I struggle with, like how do I work with junior people? Because I only trust my own instinct. So how do I get other people to review deals for me? I talked to him about systems and management and how they follow up on stuff, and he showed me a lot of the tools at your previous employer where they, the stuff that you guys use to document that stuff and manage it and stay on top of it. I talked to him about how to work with other big VCs, because I've seen some fairly aggressive behavior on Sand Hill Road. That's foreign to me, the level of aggressiveness, and I'm trying to figure out how to work in that environment. So all these issues, and then my one ask was, I want to organically find a deal to do with Josh, not someone else in first round. I work with some other guys. I like everybody at first round, but I want to do a deal with Josh. And I said to him, I don't want to do a deal that you're shopping because you couldn't get funded somewhere else and I'm the third tier of people you call. I want to do a deal where we do it at the same time together, where you're not already in the deal. And I'm going to bring you the deal so that you don't have to do the work. I just want to know if that's something you're interested in. And we'll see when I get there. But like, I had my mentality going in that that's what my ask was. I think it's
I can tell you what
important
deals
to
he'd want to see from you, by the way.
Okay, which one? You can mentor me after.
Any other negative, obnoxious, bad things that people can think of? All the serial numbers filed
People who take
off.
too much time. Like, be very, very respectful of time. Ask for a short amount of time and stick to it, even if they would overrun. Because if you ask for 30 minutes and you say, look, I really want 30 minutes, or 20 minutes, I promise I won't overrun. And then the meeting goes 45 or 50 minutes, you're thinking, hey, it went pretty well, we ran over. And they probably were thinking it went okay too, but the next time you call them for a 20 or 30 minute meeting, they're like, oh, it's going to take an hour. So you might not get the next meeting. And if you think of it as a longer term relationship, I would try not to overrun your time.
So it seems like with a lot of the examples that you guys offered, it was a lot of times people who didn't necessarily have a company yet, or like it was more just kind of like they just were interested in like building a relationship. I mean, could someone talk maybe a little bit about if there is a certain stage where people should be seeking out mentorship? Is there like a point where it's sort of too early and too nebulous, or where like it's too late?
I think as long as you let people know what you're looking for and where you are in your stage of development. I mean, the guy that came to me knew that it was, his migration to venture was a, 7-10 year plan, and it was going to take a while to get all the stars and stripes that he wanted to get in order to get there, and so it was really more kind of career advice than kind of building a company mentorship. And so I think as long as people really understand what you're looking for and kind of where you are in your head and your heart and what you want to go do, then they can provide you good feedback very efficiently. But it's important to have that upfront discussion so that everybody's expectations are set.
Who's the smartest person in the room? Right? There can be only one, and that one person is probably only the smartest in one or two things. We all have something to learn. It's never too late, certainly.
Smartest kid's back there, he raised his hand.
Fastest at raising.
In my world,
right? It's never too late. So, I see company CEOs that, DFJ is funded through a B or a C round, coming in to have one-on-ones with the partners. Or I know they're going to have one-on-ones with other independent board members, right, that they see as mentors or advisors. You always have something to learn. And check yourself. I don't know it all. You don't know it all. We don't collectively know it all. Right? So get as many opinions as you can. It's never too late.
That's a good point, actually. As a VC, there's really no place you can go to keep up with what's going on other than learning from people that come in to see you. So I consider part of my education every time somebody comes to see me and tells me about something interesting. Now, it has to be interesting. It has to be cutting edge. It has to be something that I'm looking at an area, whether it's social networking or internet or whatever. But I think how we learn is we meet with entrepreneurs and we try to figure out trends by talking to them, because we don't get a lot of trends just sitting at our desks. So I think mentoring can be a part of that process. And I think it's very important to think about what you're going to tell the person that's mentoring you, that they can learn from you as much as you can learn from them. So it has to be a two-way street.
What about focusing more specifically on students and how students can begin to form that relationship? Christine, you've talked about mentoring some students at SSE Labs. Do you have any advice on how a student should approach you, or whether they should kind of start gaining experience first and wait for that to come down the line?
Yeah, it's actually funny because in my notes for, when we did the prep questions for the panel, that's the first thing I put down. Be a student if you want, like, when's the right time? Because when you're still a student, you're kind of good for anything. Like, once you've gotten out of school and you've taken a job, like, okay, you're a product manager doing mobile apps for the iPhone. It's like, okay, you have this really specific label and thing you're doing. And while you're a student, like, you can be good for anything. I might want to hire you at one of my, introduce you to one of the companies. You might be doing something interesting I would want to fund. I might just, want to get to know you for some other, long-term pieces. And so anytime you're at a pivot point is a really great opportunity for, you know, seeking out someone new, because you have a real specific, they'll see you go through a change, and that's always interesting, and being part of that change is exciting. A soon-to-graduate student is the most interesting person for a mentor many times, and I think it's also the person who's most likely to get a positive response. I find it much harder to ignore an email from a student than I do from an entrepreneur. Like, considering no, seriously, it's like, because you want to be nice. I'm like, oh, I want to give him a shot. I want to help him out. You know, it's like,
Ordinarily, you're not nice, but I'm student.
I am always cordial.
Hang on to that ED address.
So I'm nothing if not polite. So anyway, so for those of you who are in school, I would definitely take advantage of the fact that you're a student. And like, you send the email out, you say, hi, I'm a Stanford student, and I'd love to, you know, connect with you about BAM, you know, the specific thing. You know, ideally getting an introduction. But that's a wonderful time to do it. And I think that, again, there's sort of that sense of possibility that comes with someone who's in school. And I know on the other side, you know, when I was at business school here, I know I did that, and I got all these people said they'd have lunch with me or have coffee with me, that I know if I emailed them now, and I would have to work I actually have to work harder to get in than when I was a GSV student. So, you know, take advantage of it.
It's interesting. I think when you're a student, you can say things like, I would love to intern to do A, B, and C. And it's pretty tough when you're 30 to say, I'd love to do an internship for A, B, and C. Unless you're a student on your MBA program. And, you know, it's funny, also another kind of hack to maybe get into VCs is find out what they do outside of their ordinary VC investing role. For example, I run an initiative in LA called Launchpad LA, which is about mentoring startup, first-time startup CEOs. And this guy from UCLA reached out. He's in their MBA program. His undergrad was a Stanford engineer. And he said, you guys need some help. And I'm like, F me, we do. Sure, I'd love to have, you know, someone with engineering skills, getting an MBA, who's willing to donate time to help me with technical stuff. And he ended up helping with that, and he ended up helping on a lot of other stuff, like we shot a lot of video at events like this, and I wanted to be able to tag it and cut it up and be able to mix and match it so I could put this video out. It was lessons learned from entrepreneurs, and he did all that for us. And so when we started having events with pretty senior people, we invited top people from all the studios in LA and from most video-based startups. We had a very focused event, and I invited him to come and hang out. So the Launchpad class ended, and he wrote and said, could I grab coffee with you? I just want to talk to you about what I'm doing next. Again, reciprocity. I'm like, are you kidding? Let's make it lunch. And so I offered him an internship at a company I just invested in. I offered him an internship at GRP. I said, look, you know, because he came in and he performed incredibly well, and I'm like, oh my God, I'd love to work more with this guy. Like, I already kind of validated his skills in a way. So whether it's something like that, I happen to keep a blog. Occasionally I'll get someone who reaches out and says, you know, can I help you? I do design work. Can I help you do design work for your blog? Or, hey, you know, I'd love to implement A, B, and C. And I got no staff. So I'm all ears when, you know, I have to sort of validate that I think it's someone talented enough to want to spend time with, but finding unique ways to get access to people also helps.
Cool, yeah, let's, by all means, please.
So Christine, your comment about the way that you approach students versus the way that you approach entrepreneurs was interesting, and it kind of, another thing that's interesting here is that, so Mark, you said like if you're looking for money, ask for advice, but I don't think I've heard from any of you guys that a relationship that started out as like a mentorship or a friendship or helping somebody out led to investment. Is that because...
Not true. I invested in a guy that launched their company today. The company is called Pose. Just announced on TechCrunch today. Met him through mentoring him.
Cool. That was my question, is do you look at investment opportunities separate from friendship and mentorship opportunities, or can those cross over?
The reason you want to mentor high potential people is you're hoping that someday, whether it's 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line, this is somebody you want to work with in some capacity, whether it's investing in their company or saying, hey, I'd love to have you as head of tech for my company or head of marketing or whatever. That's why you want high potential individuals to the extent that you can.
But also, there's sort of a natural mentoring sometimes that takes place once you've invested in a company. And so maybe you invested because of the original management team, but then they've added other people to the team, or there were some junior guys that were part of the team, and you really liked them. You got to know them through what the work they were doing, and so then you sort of take them under your wing, and you stay in touch with them, you groom them, they call you, you meet periodically. And then when they launch their company or their new company, then it's just a much easier funding decision because you've already seen what they can do. You know the advice you've given them over an extended period of time, and you've seen how they've been able to execute against it. And so then it just makes that investment decision a lot easier when that's a situation.
I think a lot of times, you know, I think it depends on what stage someone is investing in. So, you know, if you're doing seed stage investing, a lot of the time you'll meet someone who is great, you're a great person, you're like, well, it's a smart guy, you know, talented team, etc. But, you know, the idea is not quite there yet. And so I think that you maybe don't think of it as mentoring. Like, I know I've never thought of what I do with folks as mentoring until this actual panel. But, like, yeah, I mentor lots of people. So, but you end up working with those folks like, yeah, you know, love to keep in touch, and, you know, you sort of keep the dialogue going. And sometimes that dialogue is a few months until, you know, you might want to invest. Sometimes it's a few years, right? And they're doing something totally different. But it's not uncommon for that kind of relationship to get started in someone's fundraising process, I think.
Yeah, it's a people business. You know, I don't invest in ideas. I invest in people, especially at the seed stage, because the idea always changes. Right, it always does. Except I think for LinkedIn, they like to cover the fact that they're stuck to their business plan the entire time. But the people don't, right? Or you hope they don't. So, it's really important.
Other questions from the audience?
So a multi-part question here. Just to put in scale, sort of the amount of noise that you guys hear. How many emails? Just going across quickly, do you get a day? Do you have an email system that you use to try to process that much information, that much communication? And lastly, is there a way that someone, you know, out here, a potential entrepreneur, a potential mentee, can sort of bubble to the top of that list using whatever techniques may or may not work for you? Just as quickly as possible. Sorry.
200 emails, get an intro.
Yeah, I'd say it's 200, 250, something like that. And going back to his CEO comment, that's absolutely, a founders or CEO of a company that you put money into, because you read those first. You have money here. You always read those emails first. So it happens to be an intro you're going to be responsive to.
Probably 150, and, you know, give Natasha a lot of love in my office. She reads every email, and she's my gatekeeper, and
Somebody reads all your
keeps it. Yeah,
I need that.
we're extremely transparent, and so because we're a small shop, you know, and so even with our we have an MBA program that we work with, and we have interns that help us on deal review and all kinds of stuff, and so we're pretty transparent like that. But anyway, Natasha sort of is the traffic director, and her or, you know, other entrepreneurs that we've worked with, or friends or family. You know, my nephew had a roommate. All of a sudden, he started showing up in my office on a Friday. I said, Adam, why are you here? Well, Mr. Garza, you know, I don't have class on Fridays, and so I just figured if I showed up, you know, somebody would give me something.